Excerpts from the Diary of F. Williams Abernathy Abernathy 1.pngf. William Abernathy's initial sketch of the SC9 site. Friday, September 2, 1921 left Halepofer. Saturday, September 3, 1921 arrived at assigned Carter to purchase supplies and donkeys for expedition. Went on to visit Eberstrom, living in his small house by the river. Had a most excellent dinner with him and spent the night. Tuesday, September 6, 1921 returned to by boat. Spoke to Carter plans for excavation. Compensated local merchantry, insult to fruit stand. Friday, September 9, 1921 commenced operations. Begin with survey of site SC9. Ziggurat foundation measures 40 by 20 meters, oriented with the four corners facing in the cardinal directions. Initial survey indicates that this temple was dedicated to Nergal and Ereshkigal. Principal shrine is missing, but presumed to have been located atop the uppermost platform. Excavation continues at a satisfying pace, with the exception of several hours spent quarreling escaped goats. Saturday, September 10, 1921 at about 12 p.m., discovered that B. had gone missing at midday rest. A quick search found him at the southwest portion of the ziggurat in an area originally designated as a midden. Admonished B. for leaving the camp, but was told that B. had stumbled upon a stone step concealed thick by dust and debris. A short time sufficed to show that this was the beginning of a staircase cut into the bedrock. Redirected excavation efforts to this location. Abernathy 2.pngf. William Abernathy's initial sketch of the tunnel leading to chamber SC9F. Monday, September 12, 1921 excavation of staircase down to 13th step complete, revealing the upper portion of a doorway. An electric torch thrust into a hole made in the upper lintel reveals a short, downward sloping hallway largely filled with soil and debris, leading to a second doorway, also sealed. Tuesday, September 27, 1921 LD.M. arrived to oversee operations. Excavation has proceeded as far as first staircase, 15 steps. Now that entire doorway is visible, signs of apparent violence to hinges evident. Consulted with Eberstrom regarding integrity of structure. Carpenters now at work constructing supports for doorway and subsequent corridor. Wednesday, September 28, 1921 opened first doorway. Commenced excavation of debris and rubble from hallway. Friday, September 30, 1921 paid salaries. All accounted for except B, who I was told had left the expedition to return home to his mother, who has taken ill. Saturday, October 1, 1921 B. has returned from visiting his mother, and was remonstrated for leaving the expedition without first informing me. The excavation continues at a satisfactory pace. Tuesday, October 11, 1921 have cleared enough of the descending passage that a crawling man could reach the second doorway. A candle, held to a breach made in the upper lintel, reveals a chamber within, apparently a storage chamber for pots, possibly wine or water. With the hopes of the more mercenary members of the exhibition, who hoped for gold and treasures, dashed, it has been decided that the excavation's focus will return to the ziggurat itself, while a smaller team, led by myself, will continue cataloging the contents of this chamber. Abernathy 3.pngf. William Abernathy's initial sketch of chamber SC9F. Thursday, October 13, 1921 I find myself at a loss to describe the events of the past 24 hours, but I will make an effort to do so. There were 5 of us present at the opening of the second door, myself, Eberstrom, Carter, and 2 Arab laborers. The application of an iron bar and a hammer sufficed to force open the chamber, after which a lit candle was held up to the rapidly escaping air as a telltale for foul gases. Having satisfied ourselves as to the safety of the air within the chamber, we entered the room and discovered, as expected, a small storeroom for the storage of wine and oil in clay pots. We had begun cataloging the contents within when a clumsy misstep from Carter caused him to stumble against the wall, causing the pots to collapse. In so doing, he revealed that the back wall of the chamber was false, concealing a secondary chamber from view. Immediately, our eyes were dazzled by the gleam of gold and precious jewels. However, as our eyes adjusted to the light, we soon perceived 3 human figures laying in repose in the center of the chamber. 2 of them were desiccated cadavers, laying with their hands clasped across their chest, dressed in ornate priestly garb. The third, however, caused all of us to be taken aback, a woman, seemingly asleep, laying atop a gilded bed. I am unashamed to admit that I was struck dumb for quite some time at this unexpected development. It was Eberstrom who first perceived the woman's state of undress, and quickly acted to cover her with his Arab-style robe. This seemed to stir the rest of us to action. When calling out, the slapping of wrists, and application of water proved to no avail, we concluded that she must have perished. How, then, could one explain her perfect state of preservation? In our haste, we failed to perceive that one of the 2 Arabs had become more distressed. Soon, he took up the iron bar which he had used to break open the door of the chamber and lunged towards us, screaming in Arabic that the woman was the whore of Babylon herself and must be slain. His companion stepped in front of him in an attempt to stop his mad rampage and had his brains dashed out for his troubles. Only Eberstrom's quick actions saved us all from being killed, as he fired his revolver, slaying the madman. Realizing that the commotion would soon draw the attention of the camp, we conspired to keep the contents of this chamber secret. The bodies of the 2 workers were hastily covered in rubble, then the supports at the outer door were knocked out with a hammer, causing a portion of the corridor to collapse. We told the other members of the expedition that an accident had caused the deaths of the 2 laborers, and that what had sounded like gunshots were, in fact, the wooden supports giving way. This explanation sufficed to allay the suspicions of most of the expedition members, who heaped blame upon the carpenters for their shoddy work. Eberstrom, Carter, and I held a meeting in my tent with L.D. Marshall after the workers had gone to sleep. It has been decided that, as the Arabs' intellects have proven susceptible to irrational violence by the contents of the chambers, only British staff will be allowed to continue the excavation of the hidden chamber, beginning with the rebuilding of the wooden supports. 2 men shall be placed at the entrance of the chamber to guard against interlopers. All staff participating in the excavation will be sworn to secrecy, upon fear of being torn apart by berserk Mohammedans should they discover what lies within the hidden chamber. Friday, October 14, 1921 at approximately 2 a.m. last night, I was awakened from a most agreeable slumber by a scream. Leaping from my cot, I took up my glasses and a lantern and ran towards the source of the noise, whereupon I discovered one of the Arab workers in a state of panic, screaming and pointing towards the door of the hidden chamber. It soon transpired that this man had concluded that a great treasure must be hidden within that was being kept from the other workers by the British. Having distracted the guards' attention by sharing a quantity of hashish with them, he had made his way into the hidden chamber, where he discovered the contents therein. Upon seeing the woman laying upon the bed, the rascal performed an uncouth and vile act in her presence, upon which he claimed that the corpse's eyes had opened. At first, we believed this a hysteric reaction to his guilt over performing such a despicable deed, only to be interrupted by cries of alarm from the other onlookers. Turning towards the doorway to the hidden temple, we saw the woman slowly walking towards us, naked as a babe. She spoke several words in an unknown language, then collapsed into my arms, upon which I perceived that she had fallen into a comatose state. This event caused no small amount of commotion among the native workers, but some quick thinking by Carter convinced them that the stranger was my sister, who had arrived in the camp late last night, but was prone to acts of madness and sudden fits of catatonia due to a childhood ailment. The workers were then sent to bed as Eberstrom and Carter assisted me in transporting her to my tent, upon which we placed her in an extra cot to rest. Since that time, the woman has remained comatose, despite all attempts to awaken her. Monday, October 17, 1921. Eberstrom came to me this afternoon and told me that he believes he has solved the mystery of the comatose woman. He brought with him a rubbing of one of the cuneiform tablets found within the hidden chamber, which has proven to be an erotic poem written in the classic style. Of particular interest to him was the title of the poem itself, Awakening the Goddess. Eberstrom postulates that the one currently slumbering in my extra cot is, in fact, a manifestation of the goddess Kadushnanaya described in the poem, citing her striking similarity to the graven images found within the hidden chamber. As further evidence, Eberstrom noted that her prior awakening took place shortly after the grotesque act performed by the native laborer, drawing a connection between them. Further discussion led us to decide on the following course of action. Myself, Carter, and Eberstrom would draw straws. The chosen man would recreate the unsavory act described in the poem, following which we would observe the stranger for any changes in behavior or wakefulness. Should no change in state be detected, we would cease and desist any further research along these lines. Carter was then called to my tent and brought up to speed on this plan. We then proceeded to draw lots, upon which I drew the marked chit. Carter and Eberstrom excused themselves from my tent to give me some privacy, and I proceeded to engage in our chosen course of action. This proved more difficult than anticipated, as childhood punishments against this very act kept coming to mind, but eventually I prevailed. Almost immediately, I perceived that her lips had parted slightly, and her eyes were fluttering open. She then turned towards me, stood from her cot, and spoke several words in an unknown language. I attempted to repeat several of the words back to her, which seemed to cause her some confusion as she looked around at my tent, contemplating its contents. I quickly called Carter and Eberstrom back into my tent, but she remained wakeful only a few minutes longer before once again falling into slumber. It has been decided that we will repeat this experiment the following night, and that the duty of awakening the goddess will fall to a different individual each night. It is hoped that, in so doing, we shall solve the mystery of this stranger, and perhaps the secret of the hidden burial chamber. Monday, October 31, 1921. Paid salaries. All accounted for except B, who once again was not present. LD. Marshall and I have decided that, should he return, he will not be hired on again, due to his constant tardiness and absences. The nightly experiments continue, and have resulted in the following discoveries. The woman, hereafter referred to as KN, does indeed claim to be named Kadushananaya. The unknown language that she speaks appears to be derived from ancient Akkadian. I have cabled Elpo asking if an expert on ancient Akkadian can be dispatched to our location for consultation. KN appears to understand the ancient Sumerian written language. Multiple acts of worship appear to extend the duration of her nightly period of wakefulness. Aside from this, the excavation and cataloging of artifacts found within the temple and hidden chambers proceed satisfactorily. Wednesday, November 2, 1921. I am writing this entry from the steamship Oberon, en route to London. The expedition has failed, and most of its members are now dead. Only I, Carter, Eberstrom, and Marshall survived to tell the tale. I had left my tent to give Eberstrom some privacy while he carried out the act of worship when I heard cries of alarm coming from the laborers' tents. Walking to the top of a nearby dune, I was shocked to find a large number of men on horseback riding through the tents, cutting down the laborers with curved swords and rifles. I do not know how long I stood there in shock, watching the massacre take place, when a cry of warning prompted me to drop to the ground, barely avoiding the sword swung at my head. I rolled onto my back and saw a man astride a black stallion wheeling around for another attack. Once again, it was the quick thinking of Eberstrom that saved my life, as he fired his revolver and struck the man in the chest, hurling him from his horse. A quick search of his body revealed his identity as that of B, the water carrier who had originally discovered the hidden chamber, and whose constant absences had caused us much grief. I do not know what prompted him to this act of violence. Had it been greed or disaffection from seeing such rich treasures nearby, and not being able to share in the wealth? Or had he fallen prey to the same madness as the laborer who had nearly killed me several weeks before? Perhaps there was a more sinister motive to his murderous actions. Either way, we could not remain here, lest we meet the same fate as our laborers. A rushed consultation with my partners resulted in the following course of action. Eberstrom and I would accompany KN back to England, transporting her within a crate originally intended for the transport of the artifacts we had discovered. Meanwhile, Carter and LD Marshall would take the remaining crates of artifacts and travel back to England by another route. We would make contact with each other upon returning to London, upon which we would continue our research into this mystery from a position of safety. I still remember the horrid stench of burning flesh and the screams of our unfortunate laborers as Eberstrom and I drove away into the night, the goddess slumbering in the back of our automobile. The last thing I saw before the sands and the winds hid the excavation site from view was a cloud of smoke and dust rising from the ziggurat. The wretches had dynamited the temple. All of the artifacts that were yet undiscovered there, all the priceless knowledge of the ancients, gone at the hands of a gang of violent thugs. 17 Text of a letter written by F. William Abernathy to S. Eberstrom, dated -- My dearest Sam, I pray that this letter finds you happy and well. I myself am quite content these days, as Lord T. is a gracious and generous host. It was he who came up with the idea to commission artists to paint portraits of KN and have those portraits distributed to vendors near army bases, docks, and boarding schools. The resulting influx of energy has resulted in KN no longer needing our personal efforts to keep her sustained. Our little society has grown greatly since its founding. What began as a small group of archaeologists, historians, and linguists has now grown to a thriving fellowship of great minds from all around the world. I told you once that I believed the most important thing we could learn from KN was the true nature of the ancient Sumerian spoken language. How naive that statement seems now. There are things that a goddess can teach us that go far beyond mere language. Her wisdom and knowledge has given us a greater understanding of secrets that we once thought the province of God alone. If only the world could know of the amazing archaeological finds of Dr. C, or by the discovery of a genuine dragon by G.S. South American expedition. Alas, recent events in Siberia have proven that we were wise to begin this exercise in utter secrecy. If there is one dark cloud in this bright sky of ours, it is the news that our old companions Carter and Marshall have sold their share of the treasures entrusted to them and used the funds to start an auction house and gentlemen's club. May their piss burn like fire, and their bowels flow like water. Our buyers have been dispatched to recover as many of these lost artifacts as possible. So far, we have been successful in recovering several of them, though many others remain in the hands of private collectors. I am not, however, writing solely to relay idle gossip. As you may have heard, Father M. has made an attempt to convert KN to Christianity. At this, he has been somewhat less than successful. However, it was during a lesson on the book of Genesis that KN first stated that its depiction of geography was erroneous, upon which it transpired that she had, in fact, visited the very same places described in the Bible. Many years ago, you saved my life twice in the deserts of Syria. I am asking you to come with me again on one more adventure, the greatest adventure that two men could ever embark on. I know that our lives have taken us in very different paths since we parted ways in Manchester, but tell me this, can any man who risked life and limb to rescue a heathen goddess not feel the desire to do the same to discover the Garden of Eden itself? I eagerly await your answer, and hope to see you again soon. Yours truly, Fritz Manifesto of F. William Abernathy, dated August 30, 1939. I write this as the world stands on the brink of another war, a war that promises to be far darker and crueler than any that the world has known before. Short-sighted men wield powers they neither comprehend nor fully control. All that I love is in danger of falling into the abyss of a dark age more wretched than any in human history. I have contemplated over the past few decades the lessons I have learned from our ancient lady. If it were merely the knowledge of languages and cultures long thought lost, our discovery of her hidden temple would have been the single greatest discovery of our entire human history. But when one also contemplates the knowledge we have gained in things outside mere human comprehension, our greater understanding of the vast and wonderful nature of this strange universe, the thought of losing all of that knowledge to the petty short-sightedness of man cannot be borne. A simple study of human history reveals two harsh, yet simple facts. First, that mankind in its present state has existed for over 250,000 years, yet only the past few millennia have seen any real progress. Before then, we huddled in wretched caves and around sputtering fires, cowering in terror at the dark. Faced with the mysteries around us, we called the things in the night gods and demons, and we begged them to spare us and prayed for salvation. But salvation never came, for the things in the night proved indifferent, and oftentimes openly scornful, of our suffering. Secondly, that, when faced with new knowledge, mankind will rebel against it. Every scientific, socio-economic, political and philosophical advancement is opposed by those who wish to continue living in barbarism. One only look at the examples of Galileo, Socrates, Darwin, and Martin Luther to understand that mankind as a whole is rarely ready when new knowledge is gained. The current state of the world, where men who believe themselves men of wisdom stand on the verge of triggering an orgy of unprecedented death and suffering, illustrates this principle perfectly. Therefore, I and my companions in this society have come to a simple conclusion: mankind must not go back to hiding in fear. There are no gods or spirits that can protect us. We must stand for ourselves. In a world filled with the absurd and impossible, we must find a way to explain the unexplained, control the uncontrollable, and protect the world we love from the things they do not comprehend, for if we do not, mankind risks falling into the darkest of dark ages since the fall of Rome. When I came into the presence of the guardian at the gate, it spoke to me a single word: prepare. I have long considered the meaning of that command, and I am now ready to begin my preparations for the great work before me. While the rest of mankind dwells in light, I and my companions will stand in the darkness to fight it, imprison it, and shield it from the eyes of the public. We do this not for any king, or country, or religion or creed. We do this for all mankind, so that others may live in a sane and normal world. F. William Abernathy, President and Founder, Secret Society for Cultural Preservation. 30th of August, 1939. Testimony of F. William Abernathy, dated -2007. I have been giving some thought lately to the origins of our organization. Some would say that we began with the publishing of the Secure Containment Manifesto in 1939. Others would claim that our organization began when I first approached the Gate Guardian and received its command to prepare for the challenges to come. Still others mark the beginning of our organization as far back as the 19th century or even further, depending on which Victorian occult society one wishes to consider the originator of our foundation. In my mind, however, the moment that the foundation truly began was 1921, as a nervous, frightened young archaeologist, raised on Victorian notions of sexuality, knelt before the incarnation of divine, sacred sexuality in the flesh and carried out his first act of worship before her. It seems ridiculous when I say it out loud: a global power, one of the most powerful occult organizations in the world, all beginning with a young man struggling to masturbate in the Syrian desert. The very idea is laughable. And yet, as an old man, facing the end of my, admittedly prolonged, life, I believe that this was the moment that our foundation truly began. Or, perhaps more accurately, her foundation. The ancient Mesopotamians viewed their monarchy as a mandate handed down directly from the gods. The king was the vessel through which the gods spoke to humanity. With that being the case, would not the consort of a goddess themselves also be considered to have divine mandate? Could the rapid rise of our foundation be due to our status as the beloved of Kadesh Nanaya? What of the circumstances at the time when she chose to conceal herself in the hidden chamber? History shows that the cult of myuu became absorbed into the cult of Inanna around the time period that the goddess secreted herself away. Is it possible that this was her plan all along? To slumber the millennia away until such time as her adversaries became dead and forgotten, to rise again long after their deaths? Was it mere coincidence that placed the secret to her reawakening in the same chamber in which she slumbered? Once, many years ago, I compared the unknown and strange things of the world to the gods and devils of legend. If that is the case, then our Foundation can be a god in itself, for we bind, imprison, and control that which ancient man would have called gods. And at the heart of our organization, the secret seat of power responsible for our rise to prominence, is a goddess who waited for thousands of years in silent slumber for the opportunity to take back her place at the head of a new pantheon. If this were true, I would not know whether to laugh, cry, or shiver in terror at the thought. F. William Abernathy, Administrator, SCP Foundation.